The first time we were here, Zendikar was an adventure world, a place for roaming bands of mercenaries and glory seekers, fulfilling quests and avoiding dangerous traps. Now, all the races of Zendikar have to converge with one purpose. Can you defeat the mighty Eldrazi in the battle for Zendikar?
If Gideon is ever aware of a problem that he thinks he could fix, usually through action, he can't set that aside.
For Gideon, we knew that he was going to have to turn into a creature. This is Gideon's shtick. We try to make sure that every planeswalker has sort of an iconic ability so that Liliana feels like a necromancer, Chandra feels like a pyromancer, Jace feels like a mind mage, Nissa is an animist, Gideon is the soldier. So he becomes a soldier, and because this is Zendikar, he becomes a soldier ally. So he plays nicely with all of your cards that care about allies.
Gideon has come here to help the Zendikari. One of his big roles is to kind of not take everything on his own shoulders. Part of the theme of this whole block is, finding your allies and kind of gathering people to work together toward a common goal. And so Gideon's going to take on this more of a leadership role than he has had in the past, almost like this kind of general type role, and it's reflected on his card.
We want to show that Gideon is working with the allies on this plane. And he becomes an ally, he makes allies. But an unusual thing is if all your allies need is a boost, he'll show up, give you an emblem, and immediately go on his way to solve other problems and leave the battlefield. That's really different.
Keira is a merfolk planeswalker, a native of Zendikar, who loves gigantic sea monsters. She just takes joy and a kind of reverence in krakens and serpents and giant octopuses and all of these enormous titans of the deep.
Keira stands up for anything that would attack her or things that she loves. That's what's at her heart. So when Zendikar came under attack, she went out for a bigger weapon, something bigger than the Eldrazi. She came back with a God's Bident. I mean, this was pretty huge. She literally stole Thassa's Bident from Theros, brought it back, stolen God's Bident, ready to wield against these attacking Eldrazi. And Keira now, she not only has the power of Zendikar's seas behind her and all the creatures, she has this new power from a foreign land. What better way to face a foreign threat but with a foreign weapon?
Keira was originally created as a character for Duels of the Planeswalkers that led a ramp deck, a blue-green ramp deck. And I think this card really plays into that. It lets you get lands, it lets you get creatures, and then at the end it gives you this emblem that rewards you for playing giant creatures and also gives you octopus tokens, which I think is just adorable.
So Ob Nixilis is the man, the myth, the legend. He is formerly a planeswalker, formerly a human, and currently he is a demon. And he has been stuck on Zendikar, and the hatred he has for this plane has grown over time exponentially. He thinks Zendikar is the most miserable place in the multiverse to live. And all he wants to do is get out of here. He would love nothing more than to see Zendikar fall to the Eldrazi, but only after he gets out. In order to get out, Ob Nixilis is going to have to regain his spark. So we'll see how that goes for him, because time is running out as the Eldrazi threat is growing.
So Ob Nixilis is a bad guy here. Ob Nixilis was trapped on Zendikar for a long, long time, and now just wants the place gone. Never wants to have to think about it again, doesn't want any part of it, just gone. Real negative guy. So he's just all of the abilities we wanted to point in that direction. So you draw a card, got to pay life for it. Creature, kill it. Emblem, player, kill him. Just get rid of everything.
I am always really excited when we can make a simple card that we haven't made before, and I'm kind of amazed that this many years into making Planeswalkers, we were able to make one that was so simple, so direct, and yet so evocative of this character. Really makes me happy from an elegance standpoint.
In some ways, last time we were in Zendikar, there were almost two different sets. There was Zendikar and Worldwake that was one set of mechanics, and there was Rise of the Eldrazi. It was a completely different set of mechanics. And so the Eldrazi side was borrowing from that, while the Zendikar side was borrowing from Zendikar and Worldwake. But one of the interesting things was we wanted to get a sense of who they were and who Zendikar was, but it had to be through the context of they're fighting the Eldrazi. There were a lot of cool things we did last time, like traps and quests that, like, I'm sure if we revisit Zendikar, that's something we might do again. But right now, it's like, this wasn't a story about them going on adventuring quests. Like, they're fighting the Eldrazi. And so we really had to focus on what were the key things to make that happen.
In original Zendikar, the allies were a small band of creatures that were going around on adventures. In Battle for Zendikar, the allies are pretty much everyone on Zendikar, coming together to fight against the Eldrazi. So this time, their abilities aren't just affecting allies, they're affecting every creature you control.
Early in that pre-design process, Rosewater knew he wanted to really lean on the colorlessness of the Eldrazi. And to contrast that with the Zendikari, he really wanted to play with the color side of things with them. And, you know, that idea that you have allies from all over the color pie doing very different colored kind of things. We circled around on that one a lot initially, that we were trying out some like green matters. That doesn't work because then it becomes colorless matters, green matters, white matters, red matters, and instead circled around like, well, having lots of color matters.
Converge is a mechanic that we added in during development actually to sort of broaden and deepen the limit environment, so there are more different things you could do. We really like the idea of allowing you to draft sort of a 5-color deck, a multicolor deck, and it puts things at a stark contrast with the Eldrazi, who are very much about colorlessness, and now here you can build a deck that's very colorful. So take the card to Juru Stalwart, for example. This enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter for each color of mana spent to cast it. So, you know, normally it's a 0/1, but it can be as big as a 3/4 if you spend 3 different colors of mana to cast it. And this is great because it's a nice reward for the Converge deck. A 3-mana 3/4 is a better creature on average than you get for 3 mana, and it's also defensively statted, so it can help your multicolor deck survive to get all of your colors online.
I really like Converge because it rewards you for having multiple colors, but it doesn't punish you if you don't draw all of them. The 3-color cards, like we saw in Khans of Tarkir, if you only draw 2 of your colors, they're just useless. But a card like Woodland Wanderer, if you only draw 2 of your colors, it's a 4-mana 4/4 with 2 keywords. The bad version of the card is a 4-mana 4/4 of 2 keywords.
So on the Zendikari side, when we did the board and talked about what we could bring back, the number one thing was landfall. Like, landfall was definitely, it was the top-rated mechanic, and we knew that people loved landfall. So, like, how do you come back to Zendikar and not do the most iconic mechanic from the set? So we knew going in we were doing landfall. The big question for us was, are there ways to sort of do landfall that A, didn't make some mistakes of last time with landfall, make it a little too aggressive, and B, are there some new twists and new things we could do with it?
So coming back to landfall, we wanted to have some twists on it. One of those twists is landfall, where you get an extra bonus if you play a land of a certain type. For example, Oran Reef Hydra, it's a huge Hydra that when you play a land, it gets a +1/+1 counter. But if that land is a forest, it gets 2 +1/+1 counters. That pretty quickly becomes something that's big enough to fight Eldrazi.
I knew that we were going to have the Zendikar fight the Eldrazi, and that something had to help tip the scales. And what we realized is the Zendikars had an ally that they didn't quite realize they had right away, which is Zendikar itself. Last time we were there, we kind of learned that Zendikar is kind of sentient. Like, Zendikar itself, the reason it was reacting the way it was, the danger of the world, was it's reacting to all these creatures trapped inside of the Eldrazi. And so, Zendikar doesn't like the Eldrazi. It understands the Eldrazi are bad for it. And so we wanted the land itself kind of coming to the fight.
The Awaken mechanic is sort of the third faction here. You have the Eldrazi, you have the allies, and you have the land of Zendikar itself. So Awaken was a way for us to get a lot of lands physically getting into combat without having to have a whole lot of these special lands that animate themselves. This way you can animate any land. Scatter to the Winds, I think, is a great example of the strategy that we wanted to enable, which was a control strategy. This is a counter spell, or a cancel, I should say, with the Awaken ability. So it is both a control element and a win condition in the late game. It's everything you need in one little package.
Awaken also has some exciting cross synergy in the set with the cards that care about colorless creatures, because the land that you animate is still a colorless creature.
There we are in the meeting room, and everything is going this way where we're planning this out. But we have some very clever players. We have a lot of clever players. and Ben Hayes drafts a lot of Awaken cards. And instead of doing what we were talking about and having a 3 here and a 4 here, suddenly he's got a 7/7 because he put all the counters on the same land. And his next Awaken's going to be on the same land, and he's made something bigger than an Eldrazi by using 3 Awaken cards.
What happens when you take the fastest limited format of all time and the slowest limited format of all time and combine them together? Well, you get kind of a medium speed format, which is pretty nice actually. We like medium speed. We like games where you have enough time to make some decisions, but we also like to have people be able to play an aggressive deck and have a chance of winning if that's what they want to do.
When people look back at Battle for Zendikar in a few years from now, I hope that they can really appreciate the work that went into taking these two very, very disparate card sets in original Zendikar and Rise of the Eldrazi and crafting a seamless experience that made it really feel like it was part of the same world.
With Seagate liberated and Ulamog apparently on the brink of defeat, things are starting to look up for Zendikar. But what happens next? For that, you'll need to join us on Inside R&D, Oath of the Gatewatch. But until we do meet again from Inside R&D here at Wizards of the Coast, I'm your host, Rich Hagan, saying bye.